Hello. This is my first live stream, so sorry if I am, oh my gosh! Sorry if you can hear that echo as well. Anyway, this is my first live stream. Hello! Can you guys hear the echo from me listening to my own video? A lot of little. Okay, well, hi. So, I am going to be painting Ciri from The Witcher. This model is from Brother Vinny's Historical Miniatures. And so I'm painting Ciri, and then I also have an upcoming video where I am working on Yennefer and Geralt as well. Is that going to focus? There we go. So I ordered Ciri before I knew exactly what I was going to do, and so I got her just because I thought she was really cool. So we are going to paint her today. And I'm marking my center so that I know when I'm in the middle. So what are you guys working on today? Yes, please like my first live stream. That would be wonderful. So we got goblins and D&D PCs. I am currently pulling out my mixing medium, so I always use thinner and glaze medium, and I am going to be starting with the eyes on this model because if I mess up and for some unfortunate reason have to strip and start again, I have done as little amount as possible, so I always recommend starting with the eyes or whatever area is going to be the most difficult so you waste as little time as possible. Oh, can I edit my title of this now that I've just been informed that I misspelled it? All right, sorry, one moment. Okay, anyway. So how is everyone living without Adepticon? What were you looking forward to most if you were planning on going? Yeah, I think that meeting people, and I was most looking forward to the classes. All right, so when I paint eyes, I usually just do One moment, I want to make sure that you can actually see this. There we go. Okay, so I usually just paint the whole area white. And then I will go back in and refine that with black. I think that it's far more difficult to try to get the perfect eye shape with black and then try to paint in that area white afterwards. So I find working in this way to be a lot easier. The classes I was going to take was telling how to tell a story, which included information on terrain building, which I was particularly excited for because I'm terrible at terrain building, and speed painting for commission painters, and there was a third one that I don't remember what it was going to be. While the eyes are drying, I am going to move on to her leather pants. If you guys could take a miniature painting class, what would you most be interested in taking? Yeah, faces are always a pain in the butt. One of the videos that I am planning on doing in the future is all about like 3 different ways to paint eyes, because I have several different techniques that I use to paint eyes depending on the model I'm doing. So that is one of my up and coming videos that I have planned. And I'm doing wet blending because I think that is the fastest and easiest way to paint. When you are wet blending, you want to consider what direction you're pulling your paint into. So when I am painting with this darker color and I want it to be going this way, I don't want to pull the paint towards the highlight. I want to pull the paint away from that so that I am blending dark. So the paint is going to leave, the paintbrush is going to leave the most amount of paint wherever it lifts up. And so you want to make sure that that is in the direction where you want it to be going. If you have seen my non-metallic metals video, was there a way that I could have improved that, or other areas that I could touch on that would make non-metallic metals any clearer than the video that I've already done? Because I am happy to do another one, or to whatever people need to make it more clear. So just let me know, what do you need to make NMM any easier? Hello runs with Caesars? That's a really great username, by the way. Some of my paint has begun to dry before I can wet blend it, so I am mixing an in-between color, and I'm going to blend in this in-between area. Hi, Megan. Sorry, some of my real life friends. I've told all my real life friends that it would make me feel really special if they watched it because I wasn't sure how many people would be here. So I'm just very excited that I'm feeling very loved right now. So I'm just very excited. All right, so I think I'm gonna give another layer to the white of the eyes. One thing I really like about this sculpt is that there isn't hair in front of her face or in front of her eyes. I absolutely hate it when sculptors put hair in front of their model's eyes. How are you supposed to paint that? Why do they torture painters in that way? Some of my favorite YouTube painters. Squidmar is very good, of course. I really like how Miniac is so technical. That's something I really strive to do. Is Miniac goes through and really like tries to figure out the science of like how light reflects and really breaks things down step by step. So I try to do my videos like that to make them as informational as possible. However, I come from it. I look at mini painting in a more from an artist perspective. So I try to approach things in a different way because I don't want to do exactly what he's doing. So I try to look at it in a more fine art way. But I think he's my favorite YouTuber, not because he's the most popular, but because he is so clear and concise in his videos. NMM, I mean, if you watched my video, you know how much I recommend reference photos. Again, that's just me being an artist, though. I use reference photos for everything. So I think that speaking of Miniac and his videos, although I think that his NMM video is fantastic, it's almost too technical, and so in my video, I really try to look at it from a more visual, just if you don't want to have to math this and you just want to paint, then this is how I would recommend doing it. No, Megan, my coworkers are in the chat, but they are not here to help. So I am a professional photographer, and I think that all of my art. Oh well, my Zenith. I don't know where Mochi is. Oh, actually, one moment. Someone closed the door to my office, so my associates could not join. So I just reopened the door, and perhaps we will get a Zenithal cat. But oh yes, I'm actually an artist. Oh hey Mochi, come here. Say hello. Can you reach? There we go. Hi. Yeah, you want to see people? Hi. Yeah. My very good and sweet boy, so patient. Okay, back to painting. Thank you for visiting, Mochi. Both of my cats are boys. I have Mochi and Cardamom. 10/10 intern, thanks. Moji has been absolutely thrilled with this whole stay-at-home order because he can sit on mine and my husband's lap all day. He thinks it is perfect. Hello, Crafters Forge. Thank you for tuning into my live stream. All right, now that the second coat for the eyes is done, I'm going to go back in and add the eyeliner, and this is where I'm really going to sculpt the eyes. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to, I like to test this on my hand. You want the paint to be wet enough so that you have to apply very little pressure and it really just pulls off the brush. And that's going to give you the most control. I am working on, this is Ciri from The Witcher by Brother Vinny Miniatures. There we go. Okay. So I'm now going to take this black and I'm going to sculpt in the eyes. These eyes might not be perfect because this is actually a bit of a difficult way for me to paint live streaming like this, so if my eyes aren't perfect, that is why. Oh. So there is one eye sculpted in. And now we will do the other one. Sorry, it's like when you're doing your mascara and suddenly you can't talk anymore. That's basically how I feel right now while I'm doing the eyes. Oh, those are not at all even. All right. So, what do you think of Squidward's use of my, oh, you mean this right here that I'm pulling out? I was so annoyed when I saw that video because it was, I could have done a video on that. I already do that. Well, missed opportunity. I was not fast enough. I have tried buying other micro pens in different colors because my thought was that I could use different colors for different iris colors, but it really doesn't work very well, at least with the markers I have tried, because as soon as I've gone back in, the water has made them bleed. So I've only so far have had luck with the black Prismacolors. So, but perhaps I can try a little harder to find other Prismacolors in this 005 size. But so far, only the black has been successful. All right, and another silence while I add in the pupil. Also, sorry if you can't see these eyes while I'm working. I'm trying to balance between showing you and actually doing a good job. All right, one moment while I even out these pupils. She's a little cross-eyed, but that's okay. So what I sometimes do for eyes is if I wanted to give her an iris color, I would go in with a really light color and try to do both the highlight and the iris at the same time. And I do that by doing a really light, for example, if I wanted her eyes to be green, I would go in with a very light green and try to add a highlight in the upper right hand corner. And that highlight is really what's going to make the eyes look alive. I'm not going to do that in this live stream because I don't want to sit here forever and do eyes because it can get really time consuming. So I will be doing a video on that, but for this live stream I'm not going to make us sit here while I try to perfect the eyes. So just know that that will be coming. All right, so I'm looking at an official Ciri artwork, and she has a pretty rosy skin tone. So I'm going to be using Ishtar Pink and Pale Skin. Both are by scale 75. And then I think that I'm going to add a bit of a blue to her shadows because I think that that would, it's going to complement her hair really nicely when I go in and do that sort of silverish blue hair. So have you guys been getting a lot of painting done over your quarantine? Another random thing that I do is I mix my paints with a crappy brush just because I don't think it's worth putting the wear and tear onto my really nice brush if I don't have to. Yeah, it's a bit stressful painting at the moment. It's hard to get really excited. I definitely understand that. I am waiting to hear if I will potentially be laid off. And it's definitely been more stressful than I would like it to be. I wasn't as worried about this until I learned that I might get laid off, and suddenly it has become a lot scarier than original. I guess that's always how it goes, though. I think it's because I don't know, it seemed like such a distant threat until it was on our door, and then suddenly it was here, and that was a bit nerve-wracking. When I paint the faces, I use a little bit thicker paint than normal because I need to cover up all of this extra black that we've added for her, for the eyeliner. So the one downside about painting the eyes in this way is that I have to work harder to cover up the black, and it can also add extra texture that you don't want, because the places that the eyes visually go first is the face and whatever your model is holding. That's just how humans are programmed. We look for the faces and then we look for what they're doing. So you really want to avoid having extra texture on the face, but I worry about eyes so much that I would rather do it this way and then worry about texture later than potentially doing the whole face and then ruining the eyes. And I'm going to be mixing the shadow with, this is Walnut by Scale 75. So I'm going to use this as the majority of my shadow, but I am going to add in a little bit of that blue so that we can get it a little colder as well. How many people have watched The Witcher or read the books or seen the TV show? There we go. I bought the book, or I bought one of the books, the one that was the highest rated on Audible, with the idea that I could listen to it with my husband. We have not yet done that, but otherwise we watch the TV show, which is how we originally got into it. But we don't really play video games, so I've never played the game. How many people saw the surprise in the TV show coming? I don't want to give it away for anyone who hasn't seen it yet, but what I'm doing right now is I am sort of in the same way that we sculpted the eyes with the black. I'm doing the same thing with the skin tone and building up around her eyeliner until that is going to be the perfect shape as well. I just find that reducing is so much easier, if that makes sense. The fact that I painted larger and now I'm very delicately reducing that area, I just find that to be a far easier way to paint. All right, you don't want to try to push this too far right away. You want to make sure that you give it enough time to dry, because that's the fastest way for you to build up unwanted texture. So I'm going to move on to the pants for a little bit to give that face a chance to dry. And I am going to just build up some of the highlights on these pants. If you could pick the topic of an upcoming video that I do, what would you be most interested in seeing? NMM, OSL. I've our topics that I've already heard, but is there anything? I had one person request like spectral, how to paint spectral, and I really have to think about that because that is a really great question. I feel like teal is so easy and overdone that I don't want to just talk about how to paint teal. So I'm not really sure how the best way to illustrate ethereal or spectral is. What would you guys think of for a good way to show that sort of idea? Contrast video, are you thinking about light and dark or color contrast or all of the above, or what are you curious about when it comes to contrast, so I can make sure that I hit what you want to learn? Oh God. That certainly is the commission painter question, isn't it? Let's see. How do I get high quality paint jobs without taking forever? I mean, first of all, I do take forever. So, let's see. I think that learning, there are some really, it's coming up with tricks that will speed you up the most. Like airbrushing is such a game changer. I also have a masking liquid that I use from Green Stuff World that helps when I am airbrushing, and then doing things or covering up areas with blue tack is also a great way to do it. But honestly, it's yeah, I'm a really slow painter, and it's definitely something that I need to work on. But wet blending, airbrushing, understanding where to spend your time, again, like the face and hands wherever they're holding it. Generally, you want to spend more time on the upper half of your model than the lower half of your model. So it depends on the level of detail you're charging for. Like if you're charging for tabletop, then that's very, very different than if you're charging for display quality. If you're charging for tabletop, then I like choose where you're going to focus and focus on those areas, and don't worry about painting absolutely everything perfectly. The likelihood of people noticing you didn't paint the buckles on the boots is a lot lower if it's tabletop quality, whereas if you're advertising yourself as painting like display quality, people might legitimately get annoyed about you not painting those buckles. Ah, yeah, warm, okay. Color contrast, pure colors, light, dark, warm, cool. Okay. I was working on a door. Oh no, I put that door. Oh no, with this one, I am working on color contrast. I'm planning on playing with her having the red cloak, and then I'm going to give her silver armor, and I've already begun using blue in the shadows here to give her the most color contrast as possible. So I'm playing with her shadows being blue and her highlights being more orange, and that's going to add a lot more visual interest to this miniature instead of it was just darker red in here and then brighter red out here. So this isn't pushed as much as I could push it, but even adding that little bit of the blue in the shadows makes her a lot more interesting than she would be otherwise. One of the things that's helped me become, has helped me become the best at painting faces is watching makeup videos, actually. A perk of being a girl, because specifically contouring videos, granted, you don't really need to pay attention to the application of how to apply contouring and where to apply blush and things, or like how to apply blush and things like that, but the idea of placing blush higher up on the cheeks to make them appear rounder is something that's actually legitimate for mini painting. Yeah, everyone's always their worst critic. Um, I I always I think that one thing that can help with that though is sending a lot of in progress photos to your client, and the happier they are, then at some point you just need to accept of, well, if they're happy, that's what's important, because you can see all of your own flaws. You can see that, oh well, the texture's built up too much there because I had to redo the armor too many times. Whereas the likelihood of your clients noticing is far lower because you know what you're looking for and they don't. They'll probably just be really excited that they have a cool new miniature. But speaking of contouring the face, so you want to have the highlights right here on both sides, and then you're going to contour or do shadow in the where the hollows of the cheeks would be, and then there'll be an area of skin tone and then another layer of shadow under the jaw. And then you're going to add shadow alongside the nose and then under the hairline. And depending on how big your miniature is, you could also add shadow under the eye sockets, but with a miniature this small, I'm really not going to do it. Runs with scissors, what kind of what level are you going to do and what models are you most interested in painting for commissions? Sorry if I go out of frame while I am doing this eyeliner. And this is when you want to spend the most time looking at your model and trying to make sure that the eyes are even. My eyes are not even because, of course, I noticed it at this point. When else would I possibly notice it? Except, I mean, at least I didn't notice it when it was almost done because I've absolutely done that before. But so I'm going to take some black and try to go back in and fix this eyeliner. All right, that looks better. All right. Yeah, it's always good to strive to be the best. I think that I think everyone is their own worst critic. Sometimes I wonder why anyone even bothers watching me, because there's so many better YouTubers. And like, I'm not the fastest, I'm not the best, and I sometimes wonder why people bother watching me. But, you know, but here you are. So I think that sometimes, I don't know. Like I said, I like to come at this, I like to think that I come at this from a different perspective from most miniature painters, and that's why people like to watch me, because I come at this as a classically trained artist. So I think that that's why people like to watch me, but it's really, really easy to be to get down on yourself about such things. But you're all here, so I'm feeling like fantastic. I didn't know if anyone would come to this. I am thrilled. I'm having a great day. You all are the best, if you didn't know that already. So I'm going to let that face dry a bit more, and I'm going to continue building the highlights up on areas that the sun is that from this angle is what I am looking at. And then once I am done, is that part of her? Oh, I understand. Those are part of her pants. I should probably paint that part. This part is part of her pants, and I skipped it. So after I lay down my base coat, or after I get the majority of my pants blending done, I'm going to go in and I'm going to add some weathering to, for example, her knees. And when leather gets really worn, it gets lighter, and so I'm gonna go back in and add in some worn marks to her knees, and that will add it'll add something unique, because how many other people who have painted this have also added worn areas to this leather, and it'll also be something realistic. I think when I do miniature painting, I'm always looking for some way that I can do it different than everyone else. There is a mini that I have. This was the first mini I ever entered into a painting contest. And it is this troll. And one of the things I did when I was doing research and looking at artwork for this was I saw some trolls covered in grass, and I thought that was the coolest thing. So I have grass like coming out from under his loincloth and like under his armpits, and there were probably, this was just in a local game store, we all had to paint this mini, and there were probably 20 other minis, and no one else had grass body hair on their troll miniature, and most people thought it was absolutely disgusting and great. So I always try to look for what element can I add to a miniature that no one else is going to do. And so I think one of the things that I'm going to do for her is I am going to try to add a lot of wear and damage to her clothing. I never paint true metallic metals. I don't even own true metallic metals. So because I like to have more control, honestly, that's why I paint miniatures, is because I can have so much control. So, and I figure that, and I love doing the tiny details. If I didn't like doing the tiny details, then I wouldn't be painting something this small. So I only ever do non-metallic metals. although I have considered doing true metallic metals in a non-metallic metal style, if that makes sense. I've seen people use true metallic paint to paint non-metallic metals, and I think that might be interesting. But overall, I only do non-metallic metals. And I love that people watch for mochi. If there's one thing I know, the internet loves cats. And so I specifically film where Mochi can access me so that he can be a part of my videos. And one of the first comments I ever received was that somebody... they said, I really liked your video, but your cat was really distracting, and I don't think you should have him in your videos. And I replied back with, there are so many other miniature painters who don't have cats in their videos. So if you want a mini painter who doesn't have cats, then go watch someone else. Because I have a shtick, and part of my shtick is my adorable cat who has bangs. So you can go watch somebody else if you don't want to see my cats. All right, after this face has dried a little bit more, I'm going to go back in, and I have this paint very, like, pretty dang thin down. I'm basically glazing at this point. And I'm just going to continue glazing until her face is basically done. Oh, another way that you can paint faster is if you can do batch painting. So for example, if I had any other miniatures that were going to use this skin tone, as her face is drying, I could go be painting another miniature's face with the same paint that's on this palette. So that's another way that you can speed up. So never underestimate the power of batch painting. Or like I'm doing with this model, while her face is drying, I'm working on her pants. And again, I am using a very cool shadow because I am planning on that blending in with her hair later on. I know a lot of people use true metallic metals because it's faster. But like I said, if I'm painting something this small, I don't want to paint it faster. I paint because I love painting. Yeah, so I paint for the love of it and for the artistic use of it. I literally just paint because I love to paint. Well, for D&D, that's how I originally got into painting, was to paint miniatures for my D&D game. But so, since I just paint because I love painting, I'm not interested in getting this done as quickly as possible. Although I do think that true metallic metals and rust, I think looks really cool. I think it's a lot more difficult to get non-metallic metals and rust to look as realistic. Whoop, that was a mistake. That's okay. Everyone remain calm. Alright, so I just need to finish blending in her contouring, and then we will move on to the rest of this miniature. Sorry, I'm trying to paint the face a bit faster. I kind of went off screen there. Alright, just going to do her lips. And I'm going to paint her lips, or try to paint the crease of her lips first. And then we will go back in with a pink. Oh, well, that didn't work as planned. And don't forget to add shadow underneath the nose and underneath the lips too. And then if you have the option, you also would want to put a highlight right at the Cupid's bow. Alright, her face isn't... I think I'll probably come back in and do the face a little bit more later. but I'm not going to make you sit here and watch this whole time while I perfect her face, so we're going to move on to some of the other parts. But I'm pretty happy with her. I think she looks good. There we go, sorry. Ideally, I would be using my normal filming camera for this and all that, but the adapter that I was going to be using broke, and with a lockdown, I've not been able to get a new adapter, so I'm currently just using my phone. So this isn't the best live stream, but I think that next time, whenever I do a next one, will be a lot better than this one. So we are going to work on her pants a little bit more. And I want to push the contrast in her pants. So I'm applying the paint, and then I am feathering it out as well. So my usual two favorite techniques are feathering and wet blending. And one nice thing about, these are actually leather pants, so it's not as ideal, but when you're painting fabric, leaving visible brush strokes isn't necessarily a bad thing, because you can just say that it is the texture of the cloth and just leave it being a little thicker, especially since depending on what you're painting, for example, if you're painting like a warrior or a peasant or something, it would probably make more sense for them to have fabric that would have a thicker weave, because that would make it less expensive. Whereas if you're painting like a noble person, perhaps having versus a noble individual having something that has really visible brush strokes and is really gritty, but in general, having visible brush strokes is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just about knowing when and where to use it. Since these are leather, there's going to be even brighter highlights than there would be with other fabric. For example, cotton or something would not have this much highlights in it. But since leather is reflective, I'm going to push the highlights even further than usual to really try to sell that leather. I'm glad that you use Photopea because of me. I've always been personally sad that that's not one of my more popular videos, because I think that it's amazingly like a really great resource, and I think that more people should use it. So I am thrilled to hear that someone is using it to help plan their miniatures. Especially when I send options for my commission clients, I usually send them 2 or 3 color scheme options, and having the ability to show them what it would look like beforehand with my digital sketch, it helps both of us a lot, because I am positive that my client and I are on the same page. Because I would really hate to start painting and then send them an in progress photo and then have us not be on the same page. So I really love being able to plan out my miniature color scheme via Photopea or whatever software I'm personally using. The other thing about adding contrast, especially to these leather pants, it's not only about adding highlights, but it's also about adding shadows. So think of it both ways when you're painting. Think about pushing it in both directions, not just one, because the darker your dark areas are, the brighter your light areas are going to appear. And since leather interacts so much with light, because obviously it's so reflective, it's also going to have deeper shadows. Oh, that area is part of her pants as well. I'm really excited because I am playing a new campaign, and my character is a blood hunter, and I didn't really realize it, but when I picked up the character art and everything, she has silver hair or white hair and golden eyes. And when I was setting up to paint today, I went, oh my gosh, I am painting my PC. So that's kind of cool that I'm sitting here painting my PC for my new campaign or new game that I'm playing in. So that's pretty cool. What is Figopedia? Today was my first day playing a blood hunter. I almost died like twice. First level, 12 hit points. I almost was instantly killed by a specter who drained me of 10 of my maximum hit points. And so I almost just instantly died from the specter. And all I could think was, wow, I'm so glad I didn't get overly attached to this character or anything. But luckily we leveled pretty quickly because we're doing we're doing milestones, not XP. So luckily I leveled rather quickly and I'm now no longer as squishy. But I was really excited to play Blood Hunter and was going to be pretty disappointed if I got to play her for not even one complete session before I was just murdered by a life-draining specter. A mini painting book on light and color. I didn't know that there were mini painting books, but that is interesting. I will have to look into it. Can you get it on Amazon? I know, I thought about trying out my First Blood Maledict, I think it was. Literally, this is my first day, so if I am misspeaking, please forgive me. But I thought about doing it, and then I said, no, we can probably beat the specter. I'm not going to worry about it. And I'm so happy that I didn't, because I had one hit point by the end of that Spectre attack, and us being first level characters in our first adventure, like, we didn't have any healing potions or anything, so, but I'm very excited because I always play a bard. So I am excited to play something different. I'm a bit of a bard in my real life. I'm sure you're all shocked by this as someone who runs a YouTube channel. Everyone is, I know, just blown away by the thought that perhaps I like the sound of my own voice and, you know, I'm a charisma build. But so it's been interesting playing something different. I think that I highlighted this leg a little too much. It makes sense for this leg because this leg is upright for where the light's coming from, but I think that I highlighted this one too much, so I'm going to glaze that one back down. Ooh, Van Helsing sounds very cool. I was looking at playing a Blood Hunter, and I didn't really know anything about Blood Hunter, so I just found this YouTube video that was how to play a Blood Hunter, so like a really quick tutorial about it, and that video was talking about how Geralt is basically a blood hunter, and I went, oh, well, guess that's how we're gonna play this. So, I have not yet decided what, it's not subclass, but what order I'm going to take yet. I haven't really decided yet. But I'm very excited for us to get there. We just became level 2. So I am excited to continue playing a Blood Hunter. We are playing Curse of Strahd, and I've never played a module before. So it's pretty cool. I don't watch Critical Role. My husband watches Critical Role, and I've seen the intro to it, and oh my god, their character intros, the intro to the show where they have that flash of lightning and show Mollymock's grave. Oh my god, I don't even know what's going on, and it's so heartbreaking. So, yeah, very, very well done imagery and everything. But yes, I am definitely concerned about that with my 20 hit points. In my other campaign, I am a 14th level Warlock Bard. And it is so hard going back to first level. It is so hard. I have a plus 15 to my persuasion, and currently I'm looking at my plus 5 or plus 6 that I get for some of my other stats, and oh my god, is that really exciting. I'm also going to add a little bit of a highlight back here. And since this is so worn, I am specifically stippling my highlights because the back and butt area are going to be an area that's worked really often. The same thing with the knees. I'm stippling in that highlight because the leather is probably going to be a bit cracked and worn. Also, there are some folds right here in her leg that I didn't get. It's cool being so edgy. That is really not my normal characters. My Warlock Bard is a noble. She is really... she takes a lot of risks and is not exactly... doesn't always make the best choices, but she's not edgy. Whereas I feel like Blood Hunters were just made to be edgy. The only way you could be edgier as a Blood Hunter, I think, is to be like a tiefling. No offense to anyone who is a tiefling Blood Hunter, totally see how that fits. But I don't think you can... Or, ooh, maybe a Fallen ASMR, that might also be a good one. I'm thinking flavor-wise, not necessarily mechanic-wise. But I think a Fallen ASMR Blood Hunter would definitely be pretty edgy. Alright. I think that her pants are good enough for the moment. So we will do her shirt. Oh, first I should paint her chest. For her chest area, I'm specifically going to paint it a little more red. And I am doing that not only because in the beginning I talked about how her skin tone is more red, but also because I want to make sure that it stands out from her shirt that is also very white. Oh, that's cool. I think the best DMs are the ones who work with their players. Cool. I think that I was really first. These casts are really, really great. I'm actually really impressed. They took forever to get here. But so on this Geralt miniature, since I've only watched the TV show, I was specifically looking at... I wanted to specifically recreate Geralt from the show, so I sanded off his beard and everything so that it was closer to the TV show. So I am incredibly impressed with these casts, but I really wish that they had a Yennefer miniature, because the Yennefer miniature that I got is not very good. It's rather frustrating how poorly sculpted this miniature is. She looks really old. So I'm doing my best to work with her and just hoping that I can paint her in a way that's going to salvage this. But I was really impressed with the brother Vinny miniatures overall. They had a lot of cool like pulp culture references no, totally, this isn't Geralt of Rivia, this is definitely a monster hunter, which is definitely not the same thing whatsoever. But I wonder if it's because they're in Russia and that's why they can sort of get away with this. But I think it's pretty cool that we have access to miniatures that are from the TV shows and things that we like. Yeah, I looked at those when I decided that I wanted to do something Witcher related, but the 32 millimeter is really my favorite size to work in. I don't really like doing bigger models, so I was specifically looking for something that was closer to this size that I like to work with. All right, shirt. Again, I think that we're going to pull this a little blue. So I'm going to pull in this Kraken Purple from Reaper. And yeah, we will pull this a little, again, a little bluer with these colors. I don't know anything about Warcraft. Although I would love to learn to sculpt miniatures. I was taking a class on Udemy on Blender, trying to learn how to sculpt miniatures. And then I started a YouTube channel, and it has basically been all-consuming. And I have not had time to work on sculpting my own miniatures. But that's definitely something that I wish I had time for, because I find it very disappointing how many scantily clad female models there are, and the fact that like they always have boob armor and everything. I just find that disappointing. And so I would love to sculpt more realistic female models, specifically in sizes other than 28 millimeter, because 28 millimeter they have a pretty good range, but if you want to do anything bigger than 28 millimeter, for example, last year I was looking at doing something for Crystal Brush, and I was wanting to paint something in like a 72-50 millimeter range, and I could not find I couldn't find anything that wasn't really sexy. So would love to have time to sculpt my own miniatures, but I chose, for better or for worse, I chose YouTube over sculpting. I like YouTube because there's so much more of a community aspect to it. So that's why I prefer YouTube. All right. So we are going to start by quickly painting in these highlights. And I have her arms attached elsewhere. Make sure that you paint these at the same time, specifically if you are wet blending or mixing paints. Otherwise, it's going to just be a really difficult pain in the butt later that you really don't need in your life. So make sure you are going to be painting these at the same time. How I usually paint is I usually do several layers of wet blending, and then I go back in and add in more detailed highlights and shadows, and that was really intense. My midtones are turning too blue, so I need to mix in an intermediate gray. Yep, see, look at that. That is way too blue. Both white and gray desaturate colors. They don't only darken them down, they also reduce the vibrancy of colors. So that's why I'm adding a mix of black and white to cancel out that blue tone that I accidentally added way too much of. Also, if you're going to do wet blending, you probably should have all of your paint mixed ahead of time. That also definitely makes wet blending easier. Because now, while I spent my time trying to mix that paint, some of my paint has dried. So do not do that. Also, so I don't have all of her areas attached, example, clearly there's something that goes right here. I am purposefully, since something's gonna go here, we want to paint that in extra shadow. Because we don't want to have to try to paint in that shadow later. So be conscious of where elements are that you have not attached and paint those areas accordingly. Oh, is that a piece of flash I missed? Or is that part of the model? We're just gonna say that's part of the model, not worry about it. So since I wanted this shirt to pull more blue, I am literally painting with blue paint, but if you didn't want to do that, you could also just paint it with gray paint and then come back in with a really light blue ink or blue glaze and pull it to blue later. It really depends on what's going to be easiest. For example, that might have been smarter for me because I have a pretty limited blue selection, unfortunately. I don't have a really great navy blue, so it probably would have been smarter for me to have tried to ink this in later. So if it's going to be a really subtle color change, you don't necessarily need to paint with that exact color. You can glaze that in later. For example, I'm going to add some blushing to her face. I'm not going to paint in that blushing with a red paint. I'm going to glaze in that red blushing using an ink, because it's going to be a lot easier to control. because inks are transparent in nature. So of course you can make it too intense, but you're not as likely to obscure details that are underneath that ink. So I recommend, if you're going to do things like glazing in colors, whether that be like on the shirt or on the face, just thin it down more than you think that you should and build it up. And build it up very slowly, because you really do not want to be surprised by an ink if suddenly it's really intense and now she looks like a clown. So just keep that in mind when you are painting, that you want to build up those details slowly, especially since if you're glazing in the highlights, if you're glazing in the blush, that's obviously going to be one of the last steps. So you've obviously already spent a lot of hours on this, so it's just not worth the risk after you've spent that much time on it. So be careful, consider building it up really, really slowly. What paints do you guys paint with? And would it be helpful in my videos if I named exactly what paints I used? Because I sometimes do, but usually I don't. Would that be helpful to you? Oh, I meant to unbend her sword. That's okay. We'll make it, we'll just do it anyway. It's fine. If it is something that you guys find helpful, I will work on adding paint names to my stuff. I use Reaper. I think that Reaper is my favorite because it has the most mid-tone coverage. Scale 75 is so intense. It's very, very thick. And so I prefer, and I found that Fantasy and Game is more thin, so I prefer Reaper because I think that it's basically right in between. Is Dr. Faust still making videos? I didn't realize that Dr. Faust was still even around. No, like, no offense. I didn't know he was still making stuff. I learned something new today. Do you guys use inks on your miniatures? Because inks are something I absolutely love. Definitely need to intensify the shadows on this miniature, or at least on her top. So since her top is so light, you can only go so bright. Obviously her top is almost white, so how do you really intensify the highlights on a top that's white? So the easiest way to do that is to darken down the rest of it. So I'm going to spend some time and try to make her shadows even more intense. And especially on something as tiny as her shirt, there are just so many wrinkles. I'm not going to spend a lot of time trying to blend these highlights and shadows because they're so close together. You're not going to be able to blend it. So I just am going to paint in with this black into the recesses of the wrinkles on her shirt. And go from there. Obviously, you want it to be, I might have done it too intense up here at the top. Black might have been too intense up there. So I'm going to go back in and lighten that down. But when it comes to the sides, I am not going to worry about trying to blend like the rises and falls of the shirt. Also, while painting something this light, you want to make sure that you save your white for the absolute brightest highlight. If I were to try to paint every highlight of her shirt white, that would have to be like the brightest shirt in the world, and it would look really flat. So you actually want to paint it a little bit darker than you think you should when you're painting a white shirt, and use the white to really intensify whatever areas are going to be highlighted the most. So I'm going to build up some of this white, for example, on her breast to really make this look like this is where the light is hitting it the most. As well as on the tops of these ridges. Same definitely goes for black. If you're trying to paint black if you're trying to paint a black cape and you paint everything black, you can't go darker than that. So you actually want to paint it a gray and then paint in those highlights and shadows. Because you need to make sure that you have enough room to actually work with. All right. I'm going to touch up her chest a little bit more. Yeah, maybe your face too. All right. Let's work on her corset next. And my reference photo that I'm looking at doesn't really show her corset very well. Okay, so it is like a warm chocolatey brown color. Okay. So it looks warmer than the pants, but I don't want to paint it using like a warm toned paint like I was thinking about doing. I think that I would rather ink in the brown or ink in the warmth. So I think that I'm going to paint it in the same tones that I used on her pants, and then I am going to warm it up with an ink later. I think that's going to be the safest choice. And her corset looks like it's also leather, so it's going to have that same rather intense highlights and shadows as the pants did. What other random things can I tell you while you're here with me? My favorite brush by far is the Winsor Newton Series 7. I have tried Rosemary, Raphael. What else have I used? Oh, for a Christmas gift to myself, I got some of the Opus series paintbrushes, and I like these. They're incredibly soft. The point is perfect. Okay, this one's a little beat up, but that's a me thing, not a brush thing. I dropped it earlier and haven't reshaped the point. But I think that these bristles are so flexible that I have a really difficult time painting with them. I have a harder time controlling them and making them go where I want them to go because the bristles are so soft. I don't know who Meg Maples is. I will have to look her up. Is she a mini painter as well? And does she have a YouTube channel or an Instagram? And where would I find this individual? Quidsy brushes? I have never heard of them. I've seen the Artist Opus series on Instagram, and that's what inspired me to try them. I'll have to go check her out then. Meg Maples. I'll have to look her up. I have, when it comes to the Artist Opus, I have one of their 0 and then triple zeros. This 000 one is really good for example, if I was going to do the lining of her pants where it's that little deep recess. This brush is amazing at doing that. But I have a difficult time using it for eyes. Again, because I feel like it's too long. The bristles are too long. This is my Winsor Newton Series 7. What size is this? Size 0. And since these bristles are so much shorter, I have a lot more control of them. Yes, I do know Angel Giraldez. I do know who that is. I think I've seen his stuff on the Artist Opus website. But I've tried a lot of... I just always come back to the Winsor Newtons. And even when I get really fed up with them and I think these aren't as good as I remember them being, I just stop and take a look at them and go, oh, that's because I've had this for 10 months and I use it for hours every single day. And the point is understandably starting to degrade. So I always come back to the Artist Opus brushes. I'm sorry, the Winsor Newton brushes. Especially because you can get them with Amazon Prime. And I don't like waiting. I just want to keep painting. So if I can get it on Amazon Prime, that is a extremely important bonus for me. All right, time to start pushing the highlights on her corset. And I'm going to hit the areas that are the most horizontal with my light source. So for example, these are basically vertical, and so they're not going to have nearly the same... Sorry, I could actually be in frame. These are more vertical, so they're not going to get hit by the light the same way as these are. So these are going to be have a far more intense highlight than these will. And again, this, at least how I'm going to paint it, because using a corset is not a realistic choice. So I'm going to just assume that it's really flexible right here, and I'm going to be painting in that same wear pattern. So once I get in this sort of base layers, I'm going to go back in and paint in those lines for battered leather. And don't forget that this, there's going to be a sword here in the back, so we're going to darken down this back a little bit as well. Oh, I have to do this side too. We're just going to do a little bit on this side. Because, so here's a great way that you can tell how something is going to be lit. And you can use this for atmospheric lighting or just natural lighting or whatever. So let's say my light source is coming down directly from above. All I can do to know what areas it's going to hint is just turn this model in a way. So I'm doing this for you. So now anything that you can see is going to be lit more intensely by light. And any area you can't see is going to be in deeper shadow. So although I love zenithal highlights and I think it's really great, you don't necessarily need that much of a roadmap because you can literally just act as if your eyes are producing light, and any areas that you can see on your model, that is where is going to receive the most highlights. So when I look at her from directly above, you can almost hardly see this little bit right here because it is underneath her shoulder. So I'm only going to add a little bit here, mostly just for definition, not so much because that's actually where the lighting would be, but because we want to make this a little more interesting on this side. And so I'm just going to do like a little bit of edge highlighting here. And also it's probably going to be more worn there as well. So we can add that in too. And I'm going to edge highlight along these seams in her corset. I think I also might edge highlight her pants as well, now that I think about this. Again, since I'm painting an area that's basically done, I want to make sure that this is going to flow off my brush really easily. So I'm going to check the consistency of this paint before I use it on my hand. Because we want just the lightest touch, and we want the paint to just flow off the brush. Okay. Which one of you are in here eating something while I am edge highlighting? Oh, hi Mochi. Oh, did you come back to say hi? Toe beans. Yeah, if you come and pester me while I'm working, you gotta show the toe beans. It's the toe bean tax. And he's gone. Anyway, back to edge highlighting. I do have the best coworkers. All right, I'm going to finish up her corset, and then I think we're going to call it for the day. So if you have any last minute questions about anything, now is the time to ask. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me on my first live stream. I really appreciate all of you being here. This is our progress for the day. Ideally, I'd be a little bit further, but I'm having to focus on talking as well as painting, which makes me a little bit slower. But I think that this has been really great. I'm very happy with how she's come along. I hope that you have learned something interesting and useful from all of this. And I hope that you are doing well in this time of COVID. Feel free to comment. I think I'll put up a post on my community tab if you guys want to post anything you would like to see or any ideas or say hi to Mochi or anything like that. I will go ahead and leave that up. But otherwise, I hope that you are having a wonderful day. And thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciated it. Have a wonderful day.